بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه، أما بعد. اللهم اجعل تجمعنا هذا تجمعا مرحوما، واجعل تفرقنا من بعده تفرقا معصوما، ولا تجعل منا ولا من بيننا شقيا ولا محروما، إنك ولي ذلك والقادر عليه. All praise is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who created his creation in pairs and bestowed upon them, upon the spouses, offspring to become the beautiful spring of their lives. We thank Allah who has bestowed upon us qurrata a'yun and clarified to us the responsibility of being a shepherd and made us aware of the means to achieve the rectification of the next generation. We welcome you all today to the webinar we have arranged. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to place barakah in it for us all. And we all gathered here, we came and unite in this online webinar or meeting for one purpose, after seeking the pleasure of Allah, and it is with an endeavor or a goal to achieve the rectification of our children, along with the trials we face today. And from these trials, as you all already know, it is the trials of the devices and the screens and things of that nature which we are tested with, young and old. And this is what our brother and our teacher, Abu Sulayman, Faisal, will be talking about with us today, inshallah. And I don't want to take too much of the time. I would like to give the space for him. However, just before I do that, I would like to mention a small little points about our dear brother Faisal, so that we are aware of somewhat of who is going to be sharing with us these great benefits. Abu Sulayman Faisal, he is from the students of knowledge, and we consider him as so, who are beneficial and who have benefited very much from the scholars. He has had lessons, private lessons with some of the scholars, completing with them various books and benefiting from them greatly. He's also a teacher at Masjid al-Istiqamah in Toronto, in Canada. He also has efforts with the youth over there, teaching them and does things with them. And he has a lot of contribution to a website which was made for the sake of da'wah, posting on there several articles, so on and so forth. And he has also authored several books, Jazahullah khairan, many books in the English language, which we have all benefited from, me, myself personally, and others who I know. From the books are like the title of Quran and its inimitability, also mental health and Islam, also authored about feminism and the female Muslim identity, also about menstruation. And one of his latest books was called Islamic Parenting. And I myself have met Faisal and sat with him, attended some of his lectures, and Allahumma barik, very beneficial, Jazahullahu khaira. وهذا فيما أحسبه, this is how I perceive him. والله حسيب الجميع ولا أزكي على الله أحدا أبدا. And before I give him the space, I would like to mention very quickly to you all that these webinars, we hope for them to be on a monthly basis, where we tackle specific subjects or topics that revolve around parenting or the things that the parents they face with their children and things of that nature. So be aware and alert for any future announcements for future webinars bi'idhnillah. And if Allah wills, and if there is time at the end, after Faisal Abu Sulayman finishes, we aim to have space for a Q&A with him, inshallah. So if you do have any questions that we prefer that they are relevant to the subject, then send it to myself, the host, in the chat directly to me, and so that I may arrange them and then present them to our brother, inshallah, in a systematic manner. Barakallahu feekum wa jazakumullahu khairan. And without further ado, let us have our dear brother Abu Sulayman Faisal proceed with the webinar. فليتفضل مشكورا مأجورا.
Jazakumullahu khair, Abu Anas, Malik, for a nice introduction and also for allowing us all together today, inshallah ta'ala, for this webinar. And to make it, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, by Allah's permission, something beneficial for all of us. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabi ajma'in. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu amma ba'd. As you guys are aware, this is our second webinar for Afiyah Learning. And today's topic for this free webinar is parenting in the age of screens, Islamic guidance on the digital challenges of modern parenthood. And truth be told, what we're offering today is a very summarized discussion. Otherwise, there's books that have been written, hours of content by experts who have offered great guidance from the medical or psychological or scientific world. But our focus is to take some of that information, condense it for us, our benefit, but also put some of the Islamic side of things into it. And this is the key, that we bring our religion, the Quran and the Sunnah, as understood by the pious predecessors, as our lens, our prism to understand the world. And we know that everything we need in our lives is found in the Quran and the Sunnah and the practice of the earlier Muslims, and what our scholars continue to benefit us with us till today. So the real goal is to condense the information that's available, indicate different resources that someone can return to, but also to put things underneath the Islamic guidance, Islamic perspective. And inshallah ta'ala, our table of contents, what we hope to cover today, inshallah ta'ala, is as following. We'll begin with an introduction, and then we'll talk about technology and the internet as the signs, from the signs of day of judgment. Interestingly, some of our scholars, they mentioned that the rise of what we see today as devices and the internet. We'll also take a look then at a snapshot of reality, what's really going on regarding screen time use and device use. Then we're going to talk about why children and teens are so addicted to their devices and screens. Something for the parents to try to understand that this new generation, what's their relationship to these devices compared to ours. Then we'll talk about appropriate guidelines for screen time and device acquisition. What time should you give your child a device? How do you even decide that? And we'll conclude then with the challenges and solutions. So what I tried to do here, pick some of the biggest challenges that parents have to be aware of if they're hoping or they're thinking or they already have given their children access to devices. What are the challenges and what are solutions to them? Because there is no real benefit of mentioning, right, problems without solutions. So some of those challenges, as you can see below, picture taking and sharing, social media use, video games, mental health issues. And then we'll conclude with a helpful resource as well as some practical, actionable items. So without taking any more than that, let's just jump right into the introduction. So it's not hidden to any one of us who are listening today that we are in the digital age and digital era. And that means that devices and the internet and all the things that are present on it are actually part of our everyday lives. And so in many ways, it's not something that we are uncommon or it's uncommon to us. The problem, though, is that the way the technology is moving, the rapid pace of new devices, new platforms, whether it be social media or whether they be for entertainment are ever growing. And every day there's something new being offered, an update, or maybe even a new app, which people are migrating. Ultimately, this makes life more challenging in some ways, but for parents uniquely, studies have shown that parenting, especially in the mind of parents, has become more difficult. And many parents say it's more difficult because of these devices. And here I cite a Pew Research study, was a survey, I think done large in America, where they asked more than 1,000, I think it was, different parents about their experiences of parenting. And most of them mentioned that they felt parenting today, in today's world, is more difficult, and they highlighted as technology as being the biggest reason for that. And so this is very interesting and very telling that with the digital age, there are things that me and you are able to do that we couldn't do before, whether it be sending money or getting access to different types of information. But there are new challenges also that our forefathers, literally our parents and our grandparents, did not face. So this is important to keep in mind that there is a challenge in front of us. There are some benefits and there are some challenges. And here's the study that I'm talking about, right, from Pew Research. It says here, majority of parents today see parenting is harder today than 2 decades ago, with many citing technology as a reason why. Oh, look at that. 66% say it's harder. And when you go on this chart, technology in general is the leading cause of, or the reason why they feel that it is more difficult, although there are other challenges which are also concerning, right? Kids less respectful, more entitled, can't discipline their kids like before, etc. So this is from 2020. And so what this shows us now for parents is to prepare themselves for this challenges in front of them, because the stressors now are impacting them like not like before. Before getting into some of the details, we have to have a shared definition of the word screen time, right? So when we say screen time, what do we mean by that? One definition given is time spent using devices, whether it be mobile phones, laptops, tablets, TVs, or game consoles. So screen time is when you are behind a screen, literally. But the idea of screen time is that we're not going to mention that all screen time is bad. We need to obviously qualify our statement by saying excessive screen time or screen time addiction or device use is not bad, but addictive or excessive device use is wrong or bad. So the reason why this is important is that there are studies that show some of the upside or benefits behind using devices, whether it be for homework help, whether it be for accessing jobs or other opportunities. So we must also be balanced, and we're not condemning in this webinar screens altogether. We're not condemning also device use. What we're doing is we're trying to put parameters, and we're trying to figure out what's happening, why is it happening, and how to curb it. So children, obviously, and teens includes, when we say children, we're talking about from toddler, babies all the way up to teens, are easily hooked to these devices and apps, right? Because they're living in an era where it's become natural for them. Many of us were millennials or Generation Z, X or Y, and they can be different ages, but most of us are the generation before. So we have a different relationship with technology. This generation of children and teens, they're called a Generation Z. And what that means is that they're technological innatists. This is the terminology psychologists and experts use, which means that they grew up with technology innately. This is like in their blood, literally. Like that's how much they're used to technology, which would mean that our understanding of technology, because we had a period without it, we learned to adapt, to migrate to these different devices and tools. For them, it is their life. This is what they know. So there are harms to their physical, mental, cognitive, and spiritual, and Islamic and Iman, right? Iman side of things, all this is being impacted by their use of devices. So ultimately, for parents, learning about this topic can help them to help their children, but also help them figure out what's really happening. And maybe if they too have also fallen, victim to excessive screen use and device use. In a 2018 study, 40%, 47% of parents said they're concerned about the amount of time their children use or spend online, and 56% felt their child asked to use devices more than they would like to. And this again is taken from this study. Look both ways: practical parenting, the age of screens, I think I should say. Ultimately, this topic, inshallah ta'ala, will be helpful to all of us, but we also need to just pay attention to the differences between the younger generation and the older generation, and more will come about what those differences look like. Sorry. The challenges now that are posed, and we'll get to, have to do with the things that we already are familiar with: social media, video game addiction, sleep deprivation, academic decline and issues, morality is going down. So all of that, I can't promise that I'm going to talk about. Inshallah, we'll cover as much as we can. But what we'll try to do is try to cover the most important of them, and whatever we can, inshallah, we'll indicate different resources a parent can go and read into and get information. The biggest goal of today's presentation is to bring these issues in light of the Quran and Sunnah, but that is the most important thing for us as Muslims, but also the way we can use that as a tool for parenting. As we know in Tarbiyah, we need to combine between, of course, the teachings of our religion, but also to look at what empirical evidence is available to show what else is happening. But if parents want to help their children, they need to also come from that angle that they know both Islamically as well as a medical, you could say, perspective, what's really happening and how, inshallah, the best practice is to deal with it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to be able to benefit and to actually help our next generation of youth and children. Let's talk about from the beginning that technology ultimately, according to some scholars, is a sign from the signs of the judgment. And this is pretty interesting because again, I'm not saying all scholars, but some scholars, they interpret some of the ahadith about the Ashat al-Sa'ah, Alamat al-Sa'ah, the signs of the judgment, to indicate that technology, the internet, will arrive towards the end of times. So some of the scholars looking at this hadith, Auf al-Malik radiallahu ta'ala narrated that he went to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam during the Ghazwa of Tabuk, and while sitting in a leather tent, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Count 6 things that indicate the approach of the hour." And then Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned some of the signs, and he mentioned an affliction which no Arab house will escape. Very interesting hadith, Hadith Bukhari 3176. An affliction, a fitna that will not, no Arab household will escape. Commenting on this hadith, now this hadith again, it's from the signs of the day of judgment. Some of our contemporary scholars read this fitna to be the internet. And who are those scholars? For example, Shaykh Salih al-Fawzan, Hafizullah Ta'ala, in his Sharh al-Fitan wal-Hawadith. So his explanation of the book Al-Fitan wal-Hawadith of Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, Shaykh Salih Fawzan, Hafizullah Ta'ala, commented, saying that this issue is a widespread trial that will occur and will enter every house, or all houses. And Allah knows best, but it seems to be the media nowadays, the means of the media, yani wasa'il i'lam. And he then says it means the internet. And I don't know what this evil will transport. And again, the fact that it's going to bring us all kinds of things to your bedroom, literally, right, into idols and evil. So ultimately, the Sheikh's understanding was that this is a fitna. The Nabi Sallallahu says is going to enter every household. And what we see today is that the closest that you could say, again, Allah knows best, is that what we see today of what's entering our houses, of the internet, literally into our bedrooms. This is a great, possibility that it could be. This is what the Nabi Sallallahu was talking about. And the reason why I want to mention that is that avoiding these fitan is ideal. But the reality really is that we can't really avoid the internet, but really we can instrumentalize it. We can use it for things like this, webinars and da'wah and other things. To add to this benefit, the emergence of technology at the end of times is also, according to some of the scholars, technology, not only the internet, technology itself, as a sign of the day of judgment. Here's a hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, many of us have come across, where he said, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "By the one in whose hand is my soul, the hour will not be established until animals of prey speak to people, and until the tip of a man's whip and the straps of his sandals speak to him, and his thigh informs him what occurred with his family after him." Now, this hadith, Shaykh Al-Albani authenticated in the Sahihah, scholars, they talk about the last part, a man's whip and the strap of his sandal and his thigh informing him what happened. Shaykh Ahmed al-Najmi, Ahmed bin Yahya al-Najmi, rahimahullah ta'ala, in his explanation of the Aqidah text, Lum'at al-I'tiqad, so it's Kitab al-Fawaid al-Jiyad, Lum'at al-I'tiqad, he says, in his interpretation, that in today's time, the fact that the news has become easy and spreading everywhere, and people can speak to others from America or China or very far to the use of electronic devices, right? This could be what Nabi was talking about, a man's whip and his strap speaking to him and his thigh informing him. So he connected this hadith to this. That today we have all these, like for example, WhatsApp and other things where we talk to people via video or like what we call live stream. All of this could be indication that the Prophet I'm speaking about a man's whip or a strap or his thigh. And some say it doesn't mean literally the thigh, but it means what's inside the thigh. You put your phone in your pocket, it rests on your thigh. These interpretations are all very valid and very interesting. And the only reason why I'm mentioning this to begin with is to help parents understand that the idea of avoiding technology and devices, it's probably very difficult, if not even, you could say, as time progresses, more and more impossible. Because ideally, that's the best thing to do, to stay away. That's the ideal thing. But the reality is that if it's going to become a widespread fitna, as Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told us, then for us is to prepare for the fitna, to have strategies and plans in order to tackle the fitna. And the reality also is that if our children are growing up in this era where this is the fitna, then avoiding it, again, ideal, right? This is the ideal, this is what you're supposed to aim for. It's probably also best to be realistic and say, look, they're probably going to get technology. They're probably going to have access to the internet. They're probably already doing so in schools or their friend's house or their cousin's house. So we need to give guidelines, we need to give principles, because this will also help the kids, the young generation, understand how to deal with this fitna. So this is a beautiful beginning, I think, to help us all to understand where we are. Yeah, this also shows we're the end of times. Okay, if this is the case, what can we go from here? Where can we go from here? Well, we need to know what's happening. What is really going on nowadays? For most of us, right, we know from personal experience and anecdotally, everybody knows what's really going on about how people are using their screens and devices. But we're going to talk about here the real snapshot of what's happening, which is the problems. And this is important for parents who their children are young or those who their children still don't have device use, just to be mindful. So a snapshot of reality. Let's take a look at some of these studies. Again, I've taken just highlights of studies showing what's really going on. In the United States, most 2-year-olds use a digital device daily, and 9 out of every 10 children are introduced to a device before their first birthday. Again, that breaks all the recommendations of all the pediatric organizations out there, right? Children are not supposed to have tech use at that age, as we'll see, beyond simple things like maybe, I mean, again, we don't always do this, but some parents, they do video calling and stuff. Again, we're going to get to that. What's the recommendation? But we know this is not correct. But look at the number, 9 out of 10, 90% before the first birthday. And that's in America. Another study says nearly all children in Canada are exposed to screens by the age of 2. Again, this study here, you can find the resource. Another one, only 15% of Canadian children aged 3 to 4 years meet screen time guidelines of 1 hour a day or less. Again, 3 to 4-year-olds. Only 15% means the other 85% are breaking those rules daily. And someone will say, what's the big deal, brother? So, it's hard nowadays. These children, they're hard to entertain. We're going to see later that excessive screen time, especially introducing them to screen time and devices young, has an adverse effect on their mental and the physical development, as we'll see. Okay, so United States and Canada. How about the UK? Is there anything about the UK? Let's go over. We're gonna get there. According to Common Sense Media, 42% of kids have a phone by the age of 10. And that is actually prevailing to be the actual Allahu Alam, but it seems to be the standard age nowadays. Kids get a phone. Age 10 is grade 4. It's grade 4. I think you guys in UK might call it, I think it's got a stage 4 or whatever you got. I don't know, you guys 4 and 4, right? The idea is that grade 4, 10 years old. By 12, 71%. By 14, 91%. So grade 4, grade 6, grade 7, 8. So middle school, everybody really has it. 14 is grade 9, so you could say secondary school. So, and when you look at now the numbers here, brothers and sisters, take a look over here. Family income, gender, and race. So if the numbers are here, let's take a look at 2021 data, 8 to 12-year-olds. Clearly, we see 6 to 11, right, or 4 to 5. This is regarding how much screen time use. So the boys are winning in this category. As we'll see, video games is one of the reasons. Who has more, right, screen time use? It's looking over here to be Hispanic, Latino, and African American, white people less. But the one I'm most interested in is not those, it's to do with the income. Children who are coming from a lower income tend to have a higher screen time use than those of higher income. And the question, I mean, again, this is more sourced in America, I believe. The question is why? And that's something that we need to think about. Why are those wealthier children and parents, wealthier parents, so cautious of screen time? Where children, parents maybe who are of lower income, are not so? Is it the disparity in knowledge and education, or disparity in information, or maybe, just maybe, that sometimes when we're busy working and providing for our children, we forget that they are also being entertained by the wrong sources. So we need to understand this disparity. The only reason why I find it interesting is that the people who make these technological devices and platforms are the people who are telling us not to use it excessively. I mean, we all know Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple. He himself did not allow his own children to be using Apple products out of fear of addiction. Again, he made the Apple product and brand, and he's the one who's not allowing that. They also have many of those tech giant, executives also have a lot of cutoffs, right, for screen time use and Wi-Fi use at home. There's something to think about, right? Especially for as we're thinking about solutions, and we need to start thinking about how we can also use these kinds of strategies. Over here, we see numbers talking about the use of social media platforms, and what is the number one winner? YouTube. YouTube is now the number one source for all the children and youth, what they're using for videos, followed by Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, and it goes down from there. And we're gonna see that it depends on age. So YouTube for everybody. For those children who are older, it's Instagram. When they're younger, Snapchat and TikTok. So the reason I'm saying that, parents have to also realize the children, the way that they use social media is also indicative of their age. The younger ones usually start with Snapchat and moved in to migrate over to Instagram, and then YouTube is like for everybody. And we'll see that later that there's reasons behind this. So another study here, this one's from the UK Parliament, post 2020. 2019, Ofcom survey found 90% of children aged 5 to 15 years use the internet. And most popular devices are the tablets, then phones, then laptops, and the likes. Activities undertaken by children such young people on devices vary by age. 2019 study found that most kids between 3 and 7 used watching television. And those, and then again, here's YouTube, 8 to 11, and then 12 to 15 is social media. And then gaming is becoming more popular among girls, but still more common among boys. And over here it says, based on 2019 Ofcom's survey, children aged 5 to 15 use screen times most for accessing social media and messaging, averaging nearly 12 hours per week. And other common screen activities could watch television, YouTube, etc. So from this, we can see that it's all across the board. Canada, America, UK, all over the world. Again, this is the English-speaking world, and there's more, right? So we can clearly see, right, a big pattern of excessive screen time use and device use. 68% of parents say they at least sometimes feel distracted by their phone when spending time with their kids. And I just had to include this study from, again, Pew Research 2020, that we, the adults, are also victims. In many ways, we're actually modeling the bad behavior by not realizing that when we tell our children, stop using the phones, get off your phone, do your work, it doesn't sound ironic, it sounds hypocritical when we're actually on our own phones, maybe doing something of benefit, but they can't tell and they don't understand. So they look at us using the phones to do all kinds of activity, and then they're not allowed to use it. And this also creates then that kind of resentment. It's not good for me, but good for you. As we'll see, many parents adopt, as it says here, the saying, do as I say, not as I do. And I think it's important for parents to know, it's one of the strategies also to help lower screen time and device use, model the correct behavior. We have to model the correct behavior. So parents admit to setting bad examples themselves as they are constantly looking at their own devices to read emails, texts, and check social media accounts. Now, again, parents sometimes say, look, I have to do things on my phone. I have to pay bills. I have to contact family. I have to, and that's, again, all valid. Getting a lecture, some nice beneficial knowledge. But for parents, if they don't communicate their good use of their devices to their children to show them what they're really doing, children won't know. Second thing is, how often are we using it? So even if we're doing good, are we ourselves addicted? But then we're telling children, hey, you shouldn't be, but for me it's okay. Because then if that's the case, then it's only a matter of time and a matter of age. Because as they get older, then they're gonna adopt those models. So all of this, inshallah ta'ala, is just a clear evidence that we are in a situation where it's not easy. Parents and children are both having a hard time getting off their devices. We're breaking most of the recommended guidelines. And the reasons for that are many, but I want to talk about children specifically. Why are they so interested in these devices and screens? And why, for example, their desire to own one, to have their own accounts, where is it all coming from? And so this is very important for parents to know and for us to be aware that there is something deeper going on about their device use. So, like I said in the beginning, we come from a different generation. So our use of technology is very different. For the younger generation, technological use is not so functional. For us, it's functional. We use the internet to message people, social media to message our friends and family. We probably messages to shuyukh, get answers for questions. We pay bills on our phones. We download videos and audios or whatever else we're doing to benefit. This is what we're doing with our phones. Functional. Functional means I got something to do with it. Now look to see what the younger generation, they're not looking at a function. They're using it as an extension of identity and sense of self. Their use of technology is actually self-expression. It's instrumental. It shows like who they are. It gives them autonomy and separates them from their parent or their, like rest of their colleagues and peers. So their device use is not like our use. Hence they need it. They're actually craving it much more. And the reason why parents have to know this is that when you tell your child, no, you can't have a device, no, you shouldn't be using the internet this much, those will not pacify the concerns. You have to understand why they're so adamant, to which then you can tap into that feeling and say, hey, I know why you're asking for a phone, but for your own benefit, I'm sorry, I can't give you one now. And this empathy goes a far way because it creates not only good credit between you and the child, but also a deep understanding of their plight. Right? Parents have to empathize too. We used to be young. Our concerns are not like their concerns. But look at now some of the studies, what they have found. A 2019 study states that the use of the mobile phone has instrumental and symbolic functions for young people. The mobile phone is a multi-purpose tool for communication, expression, leisure, and information. It also has a symbolic dimension formed of appearance, prestige, and autonomy. The mobile phone facilitates the possibility of appropriately managing social relations and groups the user belongs to, family, peer, political groups in real time. So look at those words, instrumental and symbolic. It's used for communication. That's what we might use it for mainly, but then expression. So profile pictures, posting content, posting, interesting, or I mean, sometimes weird, like jokes or memes, the stuff that the children, they do nowadays, me and you don't really understand. But if you look at it from the idea that they want to separate themselves from others, they want to have some autonomy, choosing a handle on Instagram is a big deal, the name you're using. Again, there's lots of research about the psychology of it. But why am I saying this? There's also another concern. Other studies have mentioned the fear of missing out, FOMO, as a strong driver of teenagers' use of mobile phones and social media networks. FOMO is a big one. Fear of missing out. We all have it, but everyone's fear of missing out is different. So for some of us, our fear of missing out could be like you don't want to miss a lecture, or you don't want to miss a recitation of the Quran, or a specific podcast you follow. Okay, for some people, it's sports. I mean, think about it. Adults, they watch football or basketball. I mean, we have that also. But for children, it's just what's going on among my friend and peer circle. What they're posting. I can't miss out because when they're offline, they're not seeing it. Out of sight, out of mind. So FOMO is a big one because they're itching and they're not yet strong enough in their identity and sense of self so they can say no. Us, because we're older, we're practicing our deed. We might have also, again, we have a different life and different dependence level, willpower. We're not so worried about the FOMO. Right? Something happens, doesn't mean much to us. For them, they just want to be in the know. So here, I'm going to cite a nice book. It's a good book to reference if someone's interested in this topic in great detail. Dr. Delaney Roston, she has a book. It's called Parenting the Screen Age. It's a good book. I mean, a lot of information I take it for this presentation was derived from that book. She mentions that teens use social media to be seen and for seeking fame. She writes, the stories above bring up rich discussion points. So much of why teens are driven to post things stems from the very basic human need to be seen. This reality warrants discussion of personal values. So being seen, again, not wanting necessarily to be famous, but a lot of children do like that attention. And so all of this would mean that we, the older generation, parents, they need to be understanding the complicated relationship that devices and screens have or is for these children. The relationship is complicated, it's much more different. And this information can be used, like I said, to tailor conversations between you and your own child. How can you tell them no? How do you tell them in a way that, look, I know what you're looking for, I know what you're trying to get, but for your own benefit and for your deen and your dunya, it's best not to do that, or we're gonna delay it. And all of this is very important because it's also one of the reasons why sometimes parents fail in communicating or even cave in to their pressures of their children because they're not able to communicate to their children in their language. I'm sorry, I love you, but we can't. And this is important. It's a skill that's needed because negotiation, right? When negotiating with your children about what's good, what's not good, what's allowed in your house, what isn't, requires knowledge and empathy. And one benefit we take is that imagine as parents, we're not really caring about our children's feelings, we're dismissive. Then we're imagining that they're growing up in our times, right? When we grew up, and that's not the case. And we also are forgetting that they're a product of their period. Here, Mutarrif ibn Abdullah Shakhir, the Tabi'i, the famous Sahabi, rahimahullah, he says, the intellect of people is in accordance to the level of their times. It's a narration which is authentic. Right, what it means is that people, their intellect is going to be in accordance to the era they're living in accordance to the era that they're living in. In today's era, we know most people's free time is spent in what? Games, entertainment. They're not necessarily looking for benefit as much as they should, beneficial knowledge. Again, as you get older, things change, but we're talking with the vast majority of people, it's all entertainment. So this means that the children, generally speaking, because they're growing up in this side of the world and at this time period, عقول الناس, the intellect of people, it's going to be what? على قدر زمانهم, according to the level of their time. Kids want to be like the other kids. So if we want our kids not to be like that, we need to explain, understand, empathize, but also be firm, but in a way that shows that I understand and I care, but there's a wisdom behind why I'm saying no to you. Because a lot of times you may notice that disconnect in communication can lead them children to do what? Secretly use the devices. I'll give you an example. One parent mentions in one survey that he connected his phones and devices to his children's devices to his email. And then when the children go to school, the school gives them emails. He says, later I found out that my son was downloading different apps like Snapchat and the likes using the school email, and I didn't know. He changed the emails and devices. And this is important to know. Schools, they give kids emails, right? So he said because of this, he was downloading and using that Snapchat for so long before I even found out that this was the reality. And why did the child not tell his parents that he wanted this? Because he probably realized my father won't understand. He won't give me access, but he won't even empathize, maybe. That's what's so important. He won't empathize. He won't give me an alternative. So I'm saying this because this is a reality. As parents, we should know when we say no, and there's no like explanation, especially for Generation Z. Studies show that Generation Z, when you want to get some good standing with them, you explain yourself. Explanation is very important. We grew up in an era, no explanation. Right? Our parents didn't have to explain. We're kids, right? They don't have to tell us what they're doing. So many of us, we know that. Do as you're told. That's it. No means no. But in this era, it's why and how come and so and so has and then if you don't try to reason with them in a way they understand, you're not even building goodwill. And we know Rasulullah SAW was a very empathetic person. I'm just mentioning this benefit in order to get that point that understand where they're coming from. But that doesn't mean do what they want, but just be more empathetic in how you're going to tell them what's the best practice. Which leads then to our next point, our next heading. What is appropriate? When is a good time to give a child a device? And what are the guidelines for screen time? Parents often ask, right, at what age is it appropriate to give their child a cell phone, for example, right? So when we say devices, it could be tablet, cell phone, laptop, like this. Again, tablets are often used at home. A lot of parents prefer to use them for games, kids playing games in their presence or watching some educational, content in their company. But let's say the cell phone, that's the really big one because the cell phone is the one where if you give it to them too early or too late, I don't think there's a too late, but I think there's a too early. There's no reading that back. There's no going backwards because it can form a serious addiction. So there is no fixed age. Many experts they suggest though that it's best to delay it as much as possible. So that's the good news that parents are not tyrannical. No, you're not a bad parent if you said no and you delayed it as much as possible. This is important. But what you could also say is that experts are aiming or saying somewhere between 12 to 14 years old is a good time to get a cell phone for a child. Again, someone will say why 12 to 14. It's the time where they're moving from elementary to secondary or high school. Communication becomes key for safety after when they're going out and about to do different things, school or from the masjid. You want to contact them. But some parents, some of the experts said that even 14 is too young. 16 is better. And 16 is when? That's like grade for us here in Canada, grade 10 or 11, right? So that's like for in the UK, really like the end of your, I don't know what to call it, college, I don't know what you guys call it, but closer to that age. And this is something important that if the average child has it at 10 years old, delaying it for another 6 years is actually good. I'm not saying that they don't have access to the materials. They don't have access to screens at home. They have supervised access, but I'm saying giving them a cell phone. And so here, the Yale professor of psychology, Laurie Santos, she writes in an article discussing this on CNBC. She says, wait as long as possible. That's her conclusion. After again, these are people who are studying the impact, saying as long as possible, as much as you can delay it. And what's interesting about this is that there is a trend now, again, for many parents, to give the phone as soon as possible. And the reason are many. Some parents to do so out of fear of their children feeling left out. Everybody has a cell phone nowadays. So, I don't want my child to feel left out. I don't want them to get bullied. The irony, though, is that when you give them the phone, they're probably going to get bullied online through cyberbullying. So you probably actually by giving them a phone, they're probably actually enabling some bullying going on there. Or maybe a child starts bullying people through the phone. These are the realities that we're really living with. Another problem sometimes is that the child, obviously, when they reach a certain age, they're looking around and they're looking at it like, okay, I need a phone. So the pressures to give a phone, or sometimes we make phones a reward. And again, depends how you're going to do it, but you should use the age guidelines to determine if it's a good reward or not. It's a good decision or not. Giving children access to phones is not something any parent should just do without having some, as we'll see now, some research and some understanding. It goes with their age and maturity. So some parent experts say it's connected to maturity, not age. A child is very mature, but a little bit younger, you can give them a phone. For example, let's say they're not 16, they're 12, 13, and your child is very mature. You can give them a certain type of phone and try to monitor that and say, well, I can trust them. Let's see. And it's also about training, and gradual progression. Our mistake, we give them the smartphone before any other phone before it. There's phones that come before the smartphone. Smartphone is the final stage. It is the phone that we are using as adults, has everything on it, right? All access to material. They have the internet, no parental blocks. Many parents I found they don't even know about parental controls. And this is the sad reality, brothers and sisters, that our community as Muslims, number one, and number two, as immigrant community, if we are not studying about something in front of us, like we're not actually going out. I'm not saying us, the younger generations are much more acquisitive, but let's say our community in general, if we're not well educated about what's available to us, we make these kinds of mistakes. So, for example, I saw the other day in one masjid they were offering online. I saw it on YouTube. One masjid was offering as a prize for children who do well in Islamic studies class. They're going to give them an iPhone 15. Imagine that. iPhone 15, no parental blocks, no nothing. It sounds like an amazing reward because it's very valuable. The price of it, almost $2,000. But when you look at what that damage is going to do, it's like could be sometimes long-term impact. It's not how we're supposed to do it. So we need to know how to go in that direction. Here's how you can do it. First, we have to know the recommended timeline. This is the timeline, again, using information from there and using some experts' advice from here. I took it from one doctor who mentioned in his estimation, these are good recommended numbers. Today's parent, again, everybody has different, but 4 to 6, for the first two, everybody agrees. 4 to 6, no phone or devices. I'm talking about you can't own it. We're going to talk about screen time in a second, but I'm talking ownership. Nope, no ownership. 7 to 9, no ownership. 10 to 15 now. This is a point where it gets interesting. What do you do then? So if you want them to have a phone later, can you just go from 0 to 100? No, you need to go from a flip phone or starter phone. And what are those two? I'll show you guys in a second what they are. Everyone knows a flip phone, but what's a starter phone? A flip phone is the phone that we grew up with, right? The Nokia, right? You just flip it open. All you got is calling and texting. That's it. So most parents will give their children phone for safety concerns, right? The bus is running late. Okay, pick up the phone, speed dial, call your mom, tell her I'm late. Mom, I'm coming late. That's it. You don't need the other stuff. Well, we don't need all the social media, no apps. A starter phone is a phone that has texting, it has calling, but it has no internet, no apps beyond the apps you put into it. So the apps that you put into it, you decide, but it has no real access to the internet, right? And it has no access to other things. So a starter phone is a phone that's very basic. And the benefit behind the starter phone is that it trains you because you get to monitor everything they're doing to see how well they live up to the rules. If they're passing that stage, well, then after age 15, then you can say, all right, time to upgrade 16 plus. I'm going to give you a smartphone, but first I'm going to put the parental controls just to make sure. Again, so at 16, you may even say, like, I don't need parental controls now because after 15, I'm gonna put the fear of Allah into them. Taqwa is very important. I'll teach them to fear Allah and I'll talk to them now and then. We'll see later. So because when they get to 16, we know in the Sharia of Islam, they already consider now an adult. And it's important that we don't baby them either, right? If they're gonna do something wrong, or they're going to do something right at the end of the day when they reach the age of takalluf or taklif. It's also important when they reach the age of taklif, they're mukallifun now. We have to remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to hold them accountable. There's a different level. But 16 plus, yeah, you could say smartphone with parental controls or smartphone without it, but there's lots of conversation about it. But here's the part where we miss. We go from here to here. So here to here. And to take a look at the phones, here's what they look like. Flip phone, we all know this one. The starter phone is very important. I think it's a great middle ground. Again, these are some apps you can put in. Obviously, I just took this picture from online. So no Spotify, no iTunes. I'm just putting this example. But you take out what you want, you put what you need, and everything the child does, you see. Who's in their contact list? You decide. Who they're messaging or texting or what they're writing, you get to see. It's very important because the starter phone, the child cannot erase that he cannot hide it, so she can't hide it. It's everything you see it. So what it does is trains them to use it properly, and you're watching. And a smartphone, of course, we know. So the goal is to go on a progression. This is very important. I feel like this information itself, a lot of parents they don't know, and the proof of it is that from our own anecdotal experiences, we know parents who are giving their children phones at a young age. They don't even know there was a phone before a phone. They didn't know there was a starter phone before a smartphone, and a smartphone is very smart, right? I mean, these phones are designed for addictive use. So one thing that we should be careful of as parents: don't give your children or your teens phones, smartphones at the age when you know they're not smart enough to be use it, right? It can't be that the phone is smarter than them. Okay, so that's the rule. It can't be the case. And our job as parents as well, in front of Allah, we need to save our children. So by doing this, you're practicing good tarbiyah and tadarruj, gradual progression and release of responsibility. This is what they call it, the release of responsibility. You're giving them the ability to go forward in a nice way. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. You believe, fear Allah, right? And save yourself and your family from the hellfire. Okay, so I like this kind of progression. I think it's very useful. Again, experts are talking about it. It also, now that we know that parents, let's go back for a second, there's a timeline. Now you can determine when your child will come to you at age 10 and say, Mom, I need a phone. I want a phone. You say, okay, look, let's see how well you are in the other areas of your life. How's your schooling? How's your bedroom? How's your hygiene? All right. Okay. If we feel like we're going to start with the flip phone, then, or start a phone, and then after that, 5 years later, you can have the conversation. You see, this way, the child is not getting what they want, but they're also not getting nothing. And it's a secret because for them, they're thinking, hey, I'm winning something. Yeah, I asked my mom and dad, they gave me something. Yeah, I gave you something that's good for you because I know what's good for you. And I also didn't leave you empty-handed. So they can't complain either. Because another thing when it comes to negotiation, if you give them a choice between something and nothing, what are they gonna take? They're gonna take something. And that's the key. We don't want them to say, oh man, I asked for the phone. They said no. Because we'll see one of the keys to tarbiyah, Imam Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, it teaches us a nice benefit. is to always put a substitute when you make something prohibited. And I'm going to mention that momentarily. Okay, let's move over a second to a question that comes up often. Spying on our children's cell phone. Parents often ask, I wonder, to track or not to track? That is the question. Should I track them? So we said yes. If they're 10 to 15, sure. You're supposed to have a system where you can make sure that they're not, doing anything haram, especially because they're young, they don't know any better. But I'm talking about spying on their phone by just opening it, and seeing, oh, what they're writing, right? What do they see? What they're doing? For example, you have a teenager, you just take their phone when they're in the washroom and you just go through it. Parents often want to do this and they feel like they need to because there's a fear something's going wrong. And Islamically, the scholars lay down principles as to when you should and when you shouldn't. First, we should know Islamically it's haram to spy. That's the origin. Al-asl is tahrim because Allah says, oh, you believe, avoid much suspicion. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن إن بعد الظن إثم. Barely some suspicion is evil. Surah Hujurat, ayah 12. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Hadith Abu Hurairah, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said, and do not spy on one another. ولا تجسسوا. That's the origin because it's not considered Islamic and nor is it good for this anger and integrity. They were spying on one another and going through their things. But now parents may say, but what if they're doing something wrong? So the rule is if there is a reasonable suspicion that the child is doing something haram on the phones. So for example, you saw a message pop up on the screen, somebody you don't know who that is. Is it an opposite gender or something? Who's this? Or I see them doing something, I feel like something's wrong. Then you're on grounds where you can do that because this will allow you to go and to do it. And the proof that you're allowed to, because this is the key. Some parents say, well, children will say, you can't look through my phone. That's not allowed. And sometimes children will use the evidence against you. So how do you, you got to be able to say, wait, I'm the parent. I can do this. So what's the delay that we can spy on children, not adults only? Hadith, Ibn Sayyad. Most of us, we know this hadith of the boy who was suspected of being Dajjal. Right? It's a long hadith. I'm just going to put on the screen in a second. But Ibn Sayyad, his hadith, many of us, we know it's this long hadith. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and Sahaba were suspicious whether or not Ibn Sayyad was considered Dajjal or not. Again, it's a complicated conversation, discussion about what the conclusion is. But obviously, he's not. The more correct view, he's not. But there is some connection there. Without getting into that, I just want to mention what Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did. Just take the benefit from where we're taking it from, the shahid. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam went near the tree and he hid himself behind the tree with the intention of hearing something from Ibn Sayyad before Ibn Sayyad could see him. But Allah's Messenger saw him on a bed with a blanket around him from which a murmuring sound was being heard. So Ibn Sayyad's mother saw Allah's Messenger behind the trunk of the palm tree. And she said, Ibn Sayyad, Saf, which is his name. So they say his name. Right, well, that's a shortened version of his name. Otherwise, his name was, they say, either Safi, I think is the full name. She said that, and she said, Muhammad Sallallahu is there. So he turned around, he saw Rasulullah Sallallahu and he stopped murmuring. So the Prophet Sallallahu said, if she had left him alone, he would have made things clear. Okay, the Shahid hadith is the fact that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was spying on who? It's a young boy, right? Why? Hafid ibn Hajar, he writes Fath al-Bari. In the story, Ibn Sayyad is proof that the Imam is showing importance to the affairs he fears that will cause corruption, investigating that, and spying upon the people of doubt. So people who are there's suspicion about them, it is permissible to spy on them, children included, because Ibn Sayyad was a child. So why Nabi Sallallahu spying on him? Because he's afraid that he had some connection to Dajjal. So the idea behind this is that parents using this as proof when there's suspicion, when there is, not when there isn't. Sheikh Salih Fawzan, Habibullah, he allowed it. Here's the fatwa here. And also Sheikh Abdullah Rukban of the Kibar Ulama Saudi, he also allowed that fatwa. But of course, the scholars, they put the disclaimer. When there is a reason, when there is suspicion. So a bad practice would be your child has a phone, you used to give me your phone, I want to check what's inside of it. That not only sours the relationship, a lot of the children, if they notice this, that they see that parents are just going to their phone, yes, a parent is thinking they're doing due diligence, but when there's no doubt, what are you really doing? Suspecting them of bad because you have no reason to go through it. You could just talk about it. What's going on the phone? How's everything? But you suspected they're doing bad, so you went to their phone. It breaks trust, and it will also make them more likely not to tell you when other things are really happening. So something really bad's happening, they're not going to tell you. Why? Because they see that you just trust them already. So the Prophet ﷺ's practice shows when there's suspicion, and that's the key. Even in Islam, we're not supposed to be suspicious of people except when it's proof. And I think it's really important because a lot of parents, I feel like sometimes they think like they're like, obviously they think they're doing good, but then later on they notice that they're not going to see any signs anymore of anything. There's no open communication. There's no nothing because children are like, no, I'm not going to tell them anything. They're always suspecting me. And sometimes even when there is a problem, you'll be less likely to know because you couldn't tell anymore because the child's not open. Another side thing before continuing, a lot of parents will also notice that when they do this, they, for example, they spy on their children's phone without necessary need. Um, it also creates this problem where the children think then that if my parents are suspecting me, then even when I'm doing good, I can't win. I mean, they're always bad. So I want to mention the hadith quickly. I think that's somewhere down here in the line. There's a hadith, this hadith, all right. I think I should put in order later. But this hadith is very useful to show us the difference between ghayra, protective jealousy in its right place, and protective jealousy in its wrong place, especially when it's a father looking at his daughter's phone, because that's where usually the big concerns may come, right? Or mother from daughter's phone, because they always care for their daughters more than their sons. Obviously, there are reasons for that, but obviously here's the hadith that can help us. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam hijab Ma'atiyah mentions Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that there is jealousy which Allah loves and jealousy which Allah hates, and that which Allah loves is jealousy regarding matter of doubt. That's the shahid, matter of doubt. So if somebody has ghayra when there is some kind of riba. Riba means doubt. And that's the one that is considered mahmud. And the one that's considered madhmum is when there is no need for it, right? And you're just going out your way doing that. So parents may say, well, what can I do then? How do I know they're not doing something? Well, you can always converse with them, have conversations, and just talk about model good practices. And then, inshallah, the child, once they see that you're very honest, very nice, easygoing, very trustworthy, then they will also be willing to come forward and tell you something, right? Especially as we'll see, communication is key. Okay, let's go back now for a second. This hadith is very useful. Hadith Sahih Sunnah Dawud, authenticated by Imam al-Albani. I want to go back now. I'm going to move a little more quickly because of I want to complete the rest of the presentation in timely manner. Recommended screen time. So now that we saw the age that it's good to give a device. Again, that kind of spectrum. Here is now recommended screen time for each group. Taken from the AACAP, the American Academy of Children and Adolescent Psychiatry. Again, there's different organizations that have these similar guidelines. So 0 to 18 months, there's no screen time whatsoever. The only allowance is video chatting. Even then, as we know, as Muslims, that could be, again, some scholars are supportive of it. Some scholars, they don't agree with video chatting. So again, avoiding screen time altogether is totally safe. All right, that's the best approach. 18 24 months, 1 hour or less, and it should be education content. That's it. So 1 hour or less, that's the hard part. 18 to 24 months. We're talking about children now who are a year and a half, right? 2 years, right? 1 hour or less. And the problem we said is that most parents can't do that because they're busy. Life is going on. So you put something on, you go in, you get to the kitchen, or you went to the basement or the washroom, and then whoops, around an hour passed or 2 hours because you got distracted. So we got to make sure the content is clear beforehand. And that's another benefit. Parents have to curate a list of acceptable content, even if they're going to, before they even do it in the screen time. 2 to 5 years old, 1 hour or less per weekday and 3 hours per weekend. Again, educational materials preferred, but some, other interactive things are allowed, whether it be games or whether it be puzzles or activities. But here's the key: 1 hour or less per weekday, 3 hours in the weekend, because weekends there's more time, there's less school, there's no school. 6 to 15, this is where you find that the really interesting one. 6 to 15 years, less than 2 hours a day. Recreational content allowed, but healthy habits should be encouraged. Now, someone say, what about schoolwork? they say less than 2 hours aside from what they might need for schoolwork. Where's the problem? Schoolwork has become the catch-all phrase for everything. So children now, they go onto the laptop. Oh, I'm doing schoolwork. It's not doing schoolwork. It's doing schoolwork maybe and something else. So they go from 4, 6 hours at air quotes doing schoolwork. And most of us can't tell them get off the computer because they say, but mom, I have to submit the assignment. And how many of us have that experience? We say, okay, it's fine. They got me there, right? Because they're doing schoolwork. And then you see their report card, they say, hey, they're failing the class or they're doing poorly. How come? Or they did poorly in the standardized test. How could they be? What's all this? They weren't steady. So parents have to realize that it's 2 hours aside from schoolwork. And schoolwork, parents should know what the schoolwork is. You say, okay, what are you working on? Essay? What is it? It's a math test. So you know what it is and how long it should take. Because be careful, most children, they have all the tabs open. So they're going back and front, forward to here and there. How about those who are 7 to 16 and above? So less than 2 hours. If you're above 16, right, 16 to plus, including us, it should be 2 hours. We're talking 2 hours of non-work or school related. Brothers and sisters, you see, sometimes we are also culprits too because we're the ones who are also doing the mistake, right? That we're the ones who are also doing more than 2 hours. I know we get angry at children, they're doing more than 2 hours. We're all making mistakes. So we need to work together. And this is helpful to keep in mind to protect us. Okay, so inshallah, we continue. Let's talk about the challenges in front of us. This is the big one. What are the challenges in front of us and how can we deal with these challenges? Means now that we have a general understanding, we get to get to the big things. And the big things are the biggest challenges that come once you're giving your child a screen or screen access or a device. What is the best kind of practice? First thing first, there are many, many challenges of having devices. Many. I'm not going to be able to talk about all of them because of time. I'm going to highlight just a few of them. I'll first begin with the big one, which is picture taking and sharing. And this has to do with people using the devices to share right, things that are uh, very, very much un-Islamic. Again, picture taking this up is un-Islamic as a concept. But as we'll see in a second, a lot of people um, they don't realize that the children are using the phones to do these activities, right? So let's talk about it from a Islamic perspective, then let's move on to the practice solutions. Islamically, we know picture taking is something which is prohibited. If animated souls, animated right beings, things that possess souls. And the hadith of Abu Hurairah on the screen, Nabi said, Allah said, who is more unjust among those who try to create something like my creation? I challenge them to create even the smallest ant, a wheat grain, or barley grain. And scholars, they talk about the prohibition of taking pictures of things which are animated because it is going towards Allah's right and his exclusive right, and also his name as being Al-Musawwir, the one who is a fashioner. Now, the hadith says every picture maker will go to hell. So this topic comes in the books of fiqh and books of aqidah and books of tawheed, and the prohibition is well known, right, Islamically. But for children, they do not know this. So the reason why this is important, if you ask a child now, uh, okay, why are you guys taking these pictures? They're thinking I'm just trying to save memories. They're not taking it from a Islamic perspective. They're taking it from a child's perspective. So scholars explain the prohibition as clearly comes in the text, and also the prohibition extends to the modern means of technology like photographs being taken on the phones and devices, and the reasons for their prohibition. I list them here just so that parents can also know as to how and to approach this topic. Again, from my experience, a lot of youngsters, they don't know it, the prohibition very well, or they haven't been trained because at home it probably isn't something that's, being advised. So we explain to them that the prohibition comes in the Quran and Sunnah. Act of picture taking is resembling Allah's exclusive right to the creation of and fashioning, even if someone doesn't have that intention. Again, people say, I don't have the intention to imitate Allah's ability to create. Well, the hadith still prohibits it. Imam Tabari, he mentions, and Imam Ibn Battal cites in Sharh Sahih Bukhari, that just the fact of you taking a picture imitates the practice of people who do it to imitate or try to compete with Allah's quality. So we don't want to be assimilating ourselves to the practice of people who disbelieve. And doing this It's important for them to know that doing that, even without intention, doesn't matter because it's still a prohibition. Another reason why picture taking is not allowed is important because children are different than adults. You could talk to them maybe with different argumentation. You don't have to be so technical. You could tell them, look, it's dangerous for your deen and your dunya. For your deen, we know the picture making and it leads to people committing shirk, the story of people of Noah. You can talk to them about that story. And the one that's very interesting that everyone knows, the angels won't come to the house in which there's pictures. Now, some will say, oh, but what about this? What about that? The idea is you don't want to be doing it to begin with. So really, we have to start off with education because many young people, many kids, they're taking pictures. They're being allowing pictures to be taken themselves, sharing it online, and this is dangerous for their deen and the dunya. And later, we find that even sometimes pictures without hijab, right, for the sisters, and I'll talk about later other big issues. So start off with this. Parents can say, okay, I'm giving you a phone, starter phone. Some starter phones have no cameras. Some have. Some flip phones have cameras, some don't. So you start off by giving them whatever device with what boundaries you want to establish. The conversation is key. So look, you can take pictures of trees, you take pictures of the landscape, beautiful sunset, but don't take pictures of yourself and others. And you explain it from the Islamic side and you explain it from the safety side. So you don't want them to be online. And I'll say now, in order for parents to be effective in getting their children not to do this, they themselves have to stop doing it. Brothers and sisters, we know what's even more problematic is the parents are sharing their kids' pictures online, hereby putting them into trouble in their deen, right? By exposing them to the world. They're themselves doing the picture taking, which is un-Islamic. The second problem is the children are adversely affected. And I'm going to share that in a second. But we have to come start with this point because I found, again, as a teacher, when talking to the younger generation about why it's best to avoid these things, they don't even know why it's prohibited. So they're thinking like, oh, I never heard that, or someone else told me it's allowed. And it's like, look, let me just try to explain to you a little bit and give you the alternative. Remember the rule, whenever you prohibit something, you give an alternative. Abdullah ibn Abbas, when he mentioned to the man the prohibition of picture taking, he when he heard about it, he got shocked. So then he told him there's an alternative, which he said you could take pictures of mountains and suns and things that don't have souls. So the man felt content with that, and then he left. So the benefit we take behind that you can see if you give them alternatives, something that they can work with, then they won't feel the need to work to be out of let's say out of that capacity, even though they're not missing out on anything. Let's be honest. And here's another benefit: sharenting, right? The experts called sharenting. Sharenting is the practice of parents oversharing their children on social media. Sharenting is parents sharing content about their children on social media. Not only is it haram, studies have shown now that it actually impacts the children's mental health by number one. Look at this. Parents who share their kids' pictures all the time expose them to the evil eye of those who are envious of the beauty of your child and their success. Number two, identity fraud. They found that many parents, when they put their kids online, thieves who follow the vlogs on YouTube find out your child's name, where they live, how they're living, and if they meet your child, the child will think that there's someone they know. Can you imagine children being potentially kidnapped or potentially being lured by a stranger who knows their name, knows where they live, and knows their parents and everything? So this is very, very important that even parents themselves have to stop doing this. And remember the ayah in the Quran, right? Do you enjoying you al-birr on people and you forget yourself, right? تَأْمُرُونَ النَّاسَ بِالْبِرِّ وَتَنْسَوْنَ أَنفُسَكُم. You tell people to do good and you forget your own selves. So parents have to be the first role model. Don't do it yourself and tell them like we don't do it either. As a family, what we can do if you want to take some nice pictures, we go to the forest, we go to the sunset, when the sun is setting, we take some nice, mashallah, pictures of that. Khalas, yani, that's good enough for us. And for most people, it is. But remember, tarbiyah, not just prohibition, we have to teach. Now, if you understand this, what are some solutions? Now I put into categories, actual actionable solutions. Age 10 to 15, 16 plus. So for the rest of the solutions, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to have solutions in categories so that parents can have literally something to work with. For 10 to 15, consider buying a camera-free phone in the beginning. If you're scared that the kids are just going to be taking pictures, especially at school. School, they go to the washroom, the kids nowadays take pictures of themselves, selfies everywhere. And guess what? Those are the ones that make the rounds to all the kids. So give them a camera-free phone. There's a phone called Light Phone. Some of us may know about it. Light phone. It's a phone that's designed for minimalist. It just calls, calculator, calling, texting. That's it. Doesn't have no phone camera even. And a lot of people are using the light phone on the weekends or the weekdays just so they don't have to talk to people on the smartphone. Right? So that's a way to do it. It is like a starter phone. Okay, get a starter phone with parental controls. And one of the best ones on the market is a Bark phone. You can see this. Bark is it's a paid service, but it allows parents to monitor their children's practice online. They have a special phone, a starter phone. It's called Bark phone. The Bark phone has a Bark program. Bark is supposed to keep kids away from haram content and all this other stuff they're not supposed to be on. And also, you can monitor everything. It's a really good like kind of program. It costs money, but it's well worth it. And what's interesting about it, they have their own phone that's built in with it. So that way you can see everything they do on the phone, and you can just decide, all right, good, not good, have conversations by it. You're training them. And studies have shown if you train a child good by showing them good practices, it stays with them as they get older. As we know, al-khayru 'ada comes in the hadith. Good should be a habit. And opposite is true. If you don't have any boundaries, you cannot later on try to establish it because bad habits die hard, as they say. So a lot of us, we need to also realize that if you don't give your children, I mean, it looks restrictive in the beginning, but it's not. It's training them till they know what is, because again, they wouldn't know any better. It's good for them, and they're gonna know, okay, they got to do the right thing. Last one, speak to your child about personal information online, Islamic ruling, and posting images. Have a conversation. So look, as Muslims, we don't do this. We do this instead. And monitor their behavior and see how well they're going. Conversations are very important. We should not downplay them. Have a conversation. Talk before it happens. Allow them to know that what you expect from them about not sharing your address, not sharing, sometimes the kids are innocent. They don't have this kind of deeper understanding that we have. 16 plus now. If you get your child's smartphone, you have to speak to them about the dangers and the harms of posting images online of themselves. You got to talk to them about the fear of Allah, talking about how it's haram, but Allah will hold them accountable. They do not, you're reached the age of taklif, you're on your own, and I'm here to guide you. But you have to be mindful, Allah will have to seize you. And also don't track their phone or kind of like spy on it unless you feel that there is something going on. For example, somebody's parent, your friends, your friend's child, right, or has told you, or family member has told you your child's posted something online. Okay, so now you have to talk about it. Or you found an account online, sadly, with your child's name on it, or there is them and they're posting stuff. Okay, you can talk about it, you have to do. So very important that we be proactive and not just wait for a disaster to happen and then later on complain. Again, this is the key thing. You begin with these measures. Let's move now to social media since it's connected to it. Social media is another big problem. It's connected to the picture taking as well, in the sense that social media opens the whole world to these kids. And unlike what me and you use as social media, we are older. So some of us are still using Facebook. Some of us are using WhatsApp and Telegram mainly for communication and for chat groups for benefit, for Islamic channels and other groups. But children, what are they using? As we see here, and I mentioned before, to YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat. These are the top four. And it goes like this: YouTube for video watching, TikTok usually for sharing, again, and what are they sharing there? Nothing really beneficial. Well, again, most of it is either dances or hacks or songs, sadly, and Instagram. And all of these platforms offer the children Snapchat too. Gotta be careful, Snapchat as well. Snapchat is big one, even though it's dying down. Children like to use it because the messages disappear, or also because it's just easy. And most of the kids who are younger use it because it's their Instagram. Instagram, the whole world can get contact with them. Okay, so when you look at this, how can we help our children if they have any device, or even if they don't have a device, they're doing online, they go to school? Well, we give them guidelines how they should and should not use social media. We have to give them guidelines. So Islamically, we know there's harms on both sides. So we have to first communicate to the kids and the children, look, if you're going on these devices, these platforms, you should know fully aware what's happening. And we need to let them know beforehand. There are religious and cognitive harms. Religious harms are posting pictures of themselves, as we mentioned earlier. Speaking to the opposite gender, right? So that's a big one, right? Conversing with the opposite gender, forming relationships which are haram. Seeking fame and attention. Again, this is one of the biggest reasons why children like platforms like this. They get to figure out who they are. People like to follow them. Later on, what happens? They get actually burnt by that same fame because it's a two double-edged sword. Right? You get famous, and you suddenly become no longer famous. How? Your account gets shut down, gets flagged. So you children fall into depression. Some of them. Or for example, you become famous or people know you, but then who are they? Who are these people who know you? People who shouldn't know you, right? People who are not good well-wishers. And then one over here is called sexting, right? And this is one we parents should be really aware of. It's sending inappropriate, explicit content between children and they're doing this at a high level. Now, we're not saying the Muslims necessarily are doing this, but yes, some of them are, and some are also victims of it. And look at this study. Based on data collected in last 5 years, approximately 1 in 5 youth send, 1 in 3 receive, and 1 in 7 forward. That's the one that we need to be careful. 1 in 7 forward. So they're not doing it, they're not getting it, but they're seeing it and they're sharing it. Sects without consent. And recent studies, females are receiving the sects as a higher rate than males. And older youth are more likely to be sending texts than younger generations. So this is a big problem. This is one of the ones that is really disturbing, and the parents are not trying to get ahead. This could be a reality that they're going to face. So parents should know, okay, when they get a social media account, what is the most likely thing they're going to do? For cognitive harm, cyberbullying, a lot of kids get bullied by others, like when they post things and people make fun of them. Or what happens is that there's lots of extortion even going on. Like, yes, I know personally of cases like this where youth are being extorted by a third party that they received a picture from them. If they don't give this amount of money, they're done. And they're gonna expose you. Again, kuffar, the stories that they have are way, way more severe. But for us, it's still the reality. We have to be careful. Loneliness, studies have shown that children we're on the phone, but we're lonely. Are lonely, interestingly, increased anxiety, depression, lower self-esteem, social media addiction. So, since these are all harms, what can we do? Should we ban social media use altogether, or should we again put boundaries? The best is to have some boundaries. So, solutions, if you can, a 10 to 15. I don't think they need it, right? I don't think anyone needs social media, right? The way that people are using it nowadays, except for like some apps. But let's be pragmatic. First, we want to avoid it. 10 to 15-year-old does not need a social media account. Remember, most social media accounts require 13 years of age. They require 13 years of age to even get it. That's good news. If a child's trying to download it and they're gonna press 13 and above, yes, that's a lie. So you have to teach them, hey, you can't do that. Introduce to them less addictive ones like WhatsApp and Telegram so they can benefit. So again, alternatives. So if they have an alternatives, right? That way that they're not gonna feel that, oh, so you just prohibited me of everything. And now Ibn al-Qayyim's statement. Ibn al-Qayyim, he writes in his kitab, I believe it's I'lam Muwaqqi'in. There's a nice benefit, Ibn al-Qayyim, he said about prohibition and substitution. So this is going to Islamic benefit, and it's a benefit we should always carry with us because the Sharia is built on this. Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah, he talks about in I'lam Muwaqqi'in, I believe it's volume 2, page 113. He says, فَإِذَا حَرَّمَ عَلَيْهِمْ, when Allah wants to prohibit our nation or our ummah of something, إِذَا حَرَّمَ عَلَيْهِمْ شَيْئًا عَوَّضَهُمْ عَنْهُ بِمَا هُوَ خَيْرٌ لَهُمْ مِنْهُ وَأَنْفَعُ. Allah, when He prohibited us of something, the Sharia, He replaced it, substituted it with that which is better than it and more beneficial. Then Ibn Qayyim says examples. Allah prohibited music, He made halal, reciting Quran with a beautiful voice. Allah prohibited riba, He made halal, bay' wa halallahu bay' wa harram riba. Bay' is business with no limit on the profit. You can make as much profit as you want if it's halal. But riba, haram. Allah prohibited these different alcohol, for example. Allah prohibited, but He made halal everything else, food, good drinks, like soda or juice, and so look how the Sharia is built. So the same فائدة, it's a قاعدة مهمة, يعني very important. You can use note Instagram, allow for WhatsApp. How about that? They'll be fine. Because when you bargain with them, it's you or the parents. You can use a good strategy, which is right, develop some alternative, a short list, and give them a choice between that. It's the illusion of choice that gives the parent, the children, the feeling of empowerment. Okay, what do you want to do? Either option one, no Instagram, or no social media, or WhatsApp, or Telegram, or then they're gonna choose. But if you say, okay, how about this? WhatsApp or Telegram? They're like, fine, I'll do WhatsApp. That's it. Instagram is off the table already. That makes them feel better about it. They're not gonna be like, oh, subhanAllah, I have nothing. And a lot of kids, that's what it is. Just the fear of missing out. They have something. And the cool thing about all this, that as they get older, they'll see the wisdom in themselves. When they hear about their own friends who get into trouble. 16 plus, we gotta really be, communicated with them about it. Talk about Islamic etiquettes, things they expect from them, what's haram, what's halal. Talk about scientific trends. We don't always sit down for eat. We have this kind of meal time. It's perfect time to just talk about stuff. I read in the news this study, interesting thing. Because sometimes when you talk about what kids are up to, it opens a leeway to them talking about what's happening. And you notice children sometimes most of the times they can't really ignore what's really going on. Something's on their mind, they're gonna say it. So you have to set that conversation. Also give them alternatives. So for example, some kids want to listen to beneficial knowledge, give them the good channels. Give them, place to benefit. Right now, for example, we're in this webinar, Afiyah Learning. Share that stuff with them. Let them know, hey, there's a place you can go. How about, for example, ourselves? If we're on social media, us as parents, we better also be careful because our kids can find our accounts too and see what we're up to. So if we're doing un-Islamic things or we're not being very Islamic or we're not being careful, what about them? They'll find out. To move on, video games. This is a big one. I can't go into in detail because of the topic is really big, but I'll just highlight some points and some resources you can go to. A lot of parents are finding that their children are playing games, especially the boys, and it's especially, even though it's growing with the girls, but it's the boys. The boys are playing video games, and it's not just harmless pastime. Parents have to understand what's really going on. They're playing these games. They're highly sophisticated games, way more sophisticated than what we used to have. And the kids are playing them, and they're getting addicted. And now the DSM-5, which is one of the manuals for diagnosis, psychological diagnoses, it says there is now internet gaming disorder, IGD, and it's real. And here are some of the symptoms: preoccupation with gaming, withdrawal symptoms when the gaming is taken away. So when you say enough is enough, you take it away, they're getting anxiety, depression, irritability, tolerance. They need to spend more time playing than to satisfy the urge. Inability to reduce playing. So you give them strategies, doesn't work. They're playing at school, they're playing at home. They all think about games, and all these other things. So gaming addiction is real. I actually know one of my former students some years ago. He was a gaming addict. So I actually have seen that before, the experience of that. And it's really difficult because even parents, they don't know what to do about it because once they get hooked, and we have to understand how it's happening. Parents should know that game designers are using casino psychology. Right, I'll show you in a second. They're using casino psychology in order to get them hooked. What they do for gamblers. So this means that they're doing it to make sure that kids can never give up. The games are more complicated, more lifelike. So what's the guideline? So to begin with, most of our contemporary scholars, or many of them, they're of the opinion that video games in origin are halal with certain conditions. So they lay down some conditions. And again, there's some of the scholars, they have different views, right? Some of them, they say it's not permitted in general because of how non-beneficial they are. For the most part, many of them, they allow it and they put down some conditions. That it doesn't contain anything haram in there. It doesn't harm their dunya, and it's not going to harm them physically, right? Whether it be their body, their mind, their psychology, all this. It doesn't prevent them from a wajib shar'i, so they're not missing salah. They're not missing the wajibat they're supposed to do at home, like their homework and their chores. They're not using it for gambling. Very important. They're not doing gambling even amongst themselves. They play for a limited time. So the conditions have to be set up before the games are given. And a lot of this you can find in Sheikh Sa'ad Shatri Hafizullah Ta'ala's book Al-Musabaqat وأحكامها في الشريعة الإسلامية, amongst others. And he mentions some of this, right, himself in that book, page 232. The idea though is that while you could put down conditions, parents should know that, look, our kids are not even playing the games that many of us are aware of. A lot of them are playing games that we would not like them to play because their friends like them. They're also playing games online. They're playing games using their headsets, right? They're playing through Discord and Twitch. Again, the very much advanced And here's the point I was talking about, the casino issue. The same techniques psychologists found, again, there's a book on this, I didn't cite it, but there's a book where it talks about the kind of psychology that gamblers are, the casinos use to get gamblers addicted is the same kind of psychology used for games. So what they do is that, for example, they make winning a game very close. They get to what's called the pain point. The pain point is the threshold where you're just about to win, but you're just below it or just above it. So you almost won the level, but you were just a little bit too short, or you went over the time. You were so close to winning. They make that likelihood very high, that you're always below threshold or above. To make it, we call it pain point. What's the point where you're gonna give up? So they always make your losses so close to victory that you want to play again because you think you're gonna win. But what you don't know is that the game was designed that way, so you will never win, but you keep going and going and going and try to buy things in the game and in-game purchases. This is serious, like stuff that's going on in games. Like they have what they call the loot box, where it gives like a raffle. You open the box, you win something. Some of the ulama have even written buhuth ilmiya, right? Some buhuth, some research papers about what's the hukum shar'i, what's the ruling on these in-game purchases, halal or haram. Some bahithun, they've also written, researchers have written, and our fatwas have been given also. What's the ruling on me giving you money to go and you giving me some points or some filling my account with some fake coins? It's like stuff like this. We're in a different world today. But parents have to also know that many of our kids, they're immersed. They're playing Call of Duty. Call of Duty is one of the most disturbing, right? In terms of violence and addiction and immersiveness, one of the most difficult games to get out of. It's a different world. So a reference to the parents to a nice book. It's in English, by PDF is there. It's called Video Games and Our Children by Sheikh Dr. Saeed Al Salim Al Darmaki. I think he's from the UAE, but I know. And the book is in English. He talks about video games from an Islamic perspective and the Salaf Salih, how they used to play games, what games they played, substitutes for the haram games. And so it's an interesting book. And again, it's quite contemporary. He talks about a lot of the contemporary mashakil that's happening and solutions. So it's in English. If you just put the title, Video Games and Our Children, by Dr. Saeed Darmaki, you'll find it. And I think in English, there's not a lot of material. This is one of them. So it's quite good to have something like that is available. But what can parents do in the meantime? We need to learn this chart. And if you don't know this chart, you can find out online. It's called the video game ratings chart, right? Electronic games rating system. This is the newer version, not the old one, the new one. They updated it. It tells you what the ratings of each game are. Early childhood, right? To everyone plus 10, teen, mature, adults only, and paid rating pending. When you look at these are the markings they're given, ESRB, electronic, I don't know what stands for all fully, but this is the marking what tells you the quality of the game or the level of it. Many of the games that children are playing are M&A. A lot of the games that we know, Call of Duty, GTA, or Grand Theft Auto, and all the other bad games, they have these markings. So parents know M&A is no good. But there are some parents who don't know what these are, and some parents don't know that a game could be marked E, but actually it has content which is M&A. How? The game itself is E, but the way it's being used is used for M&A content, mature and adult content. So the reason I'm saying this, that parents have to always, always, always ask their children, what are you playing? Or they first give them the game, right? What they want to allow them to play. Parents also have to ask their kids when they want to play a game, what's this game called? Write down the name and do your research. And I'll show you quickly, right, some places to look. And this is a very good one. The commonsensemedia.org game reviews. This website, you put in the game and tells you the rating, parental rating. What's haram in it? What's in it? What's not allowed in it? A good example, I have to mention this one because it's corrupting many of the kids, Roblox. I'm sure many of you know about it. Many of your kids probably are playing it. This game is very bad. Right? It has a lot of it. It's very, very addictive for children. It is like a children's GTA. There's another one similar to it, Minecraft. Now, I'm not saying it's a GTA. Roblox is a free kind of single person game. It's blocks where all the kids are like all the game characters are block oriented, just running around. But what the kids do, I've seen in my own eyes. What they play this game, Roblox, what they're doing in there? Some of them are doing criminality, theft, shootings, murders. And this is one of the games, if you go on common sense, parents warn that there's haram going on there. Adults are playing the game. We're trying to get the kids. See, so parents, if you're going to give your kid any game, or they ask you to play a certain game, and you feel comfortable with them playing games, you're going to put this here. So, okay, I'm going to go check first. I'm going to check and double check. Okay, what's this? Another benefit, parents should set a limit on the video games. You can do that through what? The phone or tablet. If if you're playing on a tablet, great. You can set the limit. So after 20 minutes, it just shuts off. Beautiful. That's very useful, easy. You don't have to communicate, argue. Set a timer if you want, old-fashioned way. Consoles. If you have the Xbox or PlayStation consoles, you're gonna give them parental. They have parental control sets you can put. Okay. How about this problem? Your children are gonna get very angry when you say time's up for playing, and this is normal. Do not fall into it. Do not fall for it. They're gonna yell. They're gonna scream. They're gonna get angry. They're gonna or have other reactions which are negative. This is called behavioral psychology. It's called extinction burst. Again, it's a benefit that it's scientifically proven when the mind wants something and it's just realizing that it's going to lose that, it will do everything it can in order to get it because it wants to save this habit, like this fun game. It wants to keep playing it. So the reactions that you took away the game, I really want it, it's gonna throw a tantrum. So they're gonna yell, shout, scream, and you're gonna be like, okay, okay, extra 5 minutes. That's what they wanted. But you can't. You can't. Just give them time. They're gonna calm down and they're gonna realize, okay, I can't play anymore. That's it. So when they're doing it in the beginning, you'll notice that this is how they were gonna react, and that's what a lot of parents give up on this whole policing of games because every time you try to pull the tablet or turn off the computer, they're just gonna fight you. Just remember, this is the psychology. They're young. And also even adults. Their brain is telling them that, but you hold the ground. This is very important. It's gonna eventually go away, and they will learn later. It's either playing like the way I want, or you're not gonna play. Also, the best thing is not to get them to play games anyways. I mean, some games are not even worth the time. But let's say you want them to play games, make alternatives so the game becomes less exciting. A lot of kids they don't have a lot of free time or pastimes outside of school. They just go home and play, or they go on the computer. What about volunteering, going to the masjid, going to classes? Deen and dunya, right? What happened to the Quran classes? What happened to after school, stuff? It could be, you're going to a reading club or going to a sewing club, or you bring your friends, kids over and you do something together. Family time. That's the one that's what's supposed to replace games, right? Families to get together and talk. Personal projects. I know some kids, that's what they do. For the free time, they do something by themselves, their own little project every day. Lastly, monitor your child's behavior for any signs of addiction. So once you notice the kids going too much, they're withdrawing, they're playing online, you're finding out they're playing in school time and during school hours in school, you gotta start saying, okay, now I gotta be careful, especially the boys. Like I said, the boys are more so, but even the girls. And also, we just have to be mindful that if you have a child who doesn't play any games, who's not really interested, that's already a plus or a bonus. But if you want them to play certain games, you choose, and try to get the games which are very, very, not so addictive. To wrap up, I'm gonna mention just inshallah this last slide, and then we'll talk about a summary of everything we mentioned, and then we can take the questions and answers. Mental health and physical health. This is something else that we need to be careful of and also be mindful. Even if a child's using their devices and screens in a relatively healthy way, is it really healthy for themselves, their minds, and their bodies? And the answer is not so. Some screen time can be useful, but as you said, screen time in general has more harms than benefit. Here are some examples. And again, the word is correlation, which means it's related. It's not causation. It's not like this causes. So excessive screen time is related to being overweight, not like it will cause your child to be overweight. Because if they're always on their phones or their computers or tablets, they're not playing outside. How we grew up, we love to go outside and run around. These kids, they love to just stay at home and on the devices. So it's overweight, right? Being overweight is a big problem in our kids. Screen time is correlated, so it's added to it. It's not a definitive causation, right? It's not actually causing it, but it's one of the factors. How about short-sightedness? A lot of the kids are even wearing glasses. Many of us have noticed this. Maybe your own child has it. Is there correlation between screen time and short-sightedness? The answer is yes, but again, correlated. This doesn't mean that screen time will make your eyes everyone who uses it will have glasses, but it's especially when it's excessive and starts early in life, it can be something to be very mindful of. So that's another benefit to try to limit and also follow the guidelines that we mentioned from the experts. Thirdly, screen time is also related to shortened or disturbed sleep. That's why you should not have the phones and devices in their bedroom. Number one, it's going to allow them to sleep better, but number two, protect them from any potential bad behaviors. Look at this one too, this study here. So this is taken from the UK study. This one over here, it's a really interesting one. They found that viewing TV or videos 3 hours a day at 12 months, when compared to with not viewing, was modestly associated with greater autism-like symptoms, not autism risk. So they found that there's a autism-like symptoms increased when children are starting to use screens at an earlier age. Now, again, it doesn't mean that it's going to give you autism, but look what it says. These behavioral effects are more pronounced in children with special neurodevelopmental needs and often self-perpetuate. This is the interesting part, because parents are more likely to use screen media to pacify a child with challenging behavior. You see, we talked before the ADHD in the last webinar. Parents who have children who have certain neurodevelopmental issues and challenges, they may use screens to pacify their behavior. And that in turn may also either, I wouldn't say make the problem worse, but also it could be a symptom there is a problem to begin with. Means children typically don't need screens to be pacified. You can entertain them otherwise. But if you notice that if your child cannot sit still or they cannot able to focus, they can't really do anything without you putting on a screen, you may be actually harming them and may also revealing something about your child. Again, it's two-way street. So definitely, I think that's enough of a scare, right? And that's, again, all this is, like I said, not autism risk. We're not saying it's going to create it. But parents, we have to know, there's even some studies that show that certain TV shows have been linked with ADHD. Certain TV shows have also been linked with certain behaviors. I'm not, again, saying that it's creating it. I'm just saying that imagine the screen time and this are correlated. That means we have to always, always, always just ask ourselves, are we doing what's best for them? Because the kids are also young, they're masakin, they don't know any better. Lastly, right, all of this has to do with parents who are trying to adopt screens in their homes, even in a healthy way. Again, but if we're doing an unhealthy way, the laundry list of harms are many. So that's an encouragement that when a child's asking for screen time, you should think twice, thrice about it and say, okay, stick to the guidelines. You will be, inshallah, number one, happier and more content. You're doing the right thing, but also, inshallah, Yawm al-Qiyamah, you'll not be held accountable for in some ways harming your child due to some kind of negligence. To wrap up, because time is limited now, and I want to leave some time for the Q&A. This topic is tremendously, it's very tremendous on its size. It's a huge topic. It's very interesting, but also very necessary. My advice in summary is that parents need to know the challenges in front of them. We need to work together, parents and children, parents and community, Muslims, all of us together, and even our wide society it has to come involved. But as Muslims, we need to come together and we need to teach one another about the good practices. Parents need themselves to be role models. This is where it starts. So the parents, you got to start yourself. You got to model good screen time, lower your screen time usage, device use. Hadith Abdullah ibn Abbas, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, there's no bad example or does not befit us to leave a bad example. So if we're on the screens a lot today going forward, let's try to limit it so the parents, children can see our example. They can feel like, look, mom and dad are practicing what they preach. They're also good role models. Many studies have shown that's the best way to do it. Also, as children age, parents can adjust their rules. So it's a work in progress. Today you have one rule, tomorrow you ease it up, or another one you strengthen. I want to finish with now just a quick helpful tips you can practice. Sit down some ground rules. Here's the book I was talking about. I cited a lot of information from it called Parenting the Screen Age, A Guide for Calm Conversations by Delaney Ralston. She's a doctor. And she wrote this book after making her own documentary about children's and children and teens and use of technology. And her documentary was called Screenagers. So now it became like a new term for teenagers, Screenagers, kids who are always on the screens. Okay, so here's some beneficial points. Avoid screen time during mealtime. Avoid phones and devices in bedrooms. Avoid phone devices, such devices 1 hour before bedtime. So like, or even before that, try to make a deadline, like a cutoff where we can read before we sleep, pray, do some Quran. And before, make a family contract. That's a recommendation on agreed screen time use. What's our rules at home? Number 5, family time should be without screens. Meal time and family time. So we sit down like we're just having a conversation. They don't need a phone. Nobody has any phone at that time. We don't need a TV to have that even, or a screen. And lastly, study time should be without screens, unless you need the screens to do that, to do work. Allah ta'ala a'lam wa a'lam. Inshallah, this helps to begin a conversation. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to benefit what we heard and to take it and do more with it and share it to others. Bidna ta'ala. Abu Anas, inshallah, if there's any questions, I tried my best to take them, even though I think it took longer than I expected.
No problem, no problem. Jazakallah khairan. Allahumma zid wa barik. It was a very, very beneficial presentation or webinar. I certainly have benefited very much. Allahumma barik. Very insightful, good guidelines and things that we can refer to and gives us a bit more like, uh, you know, takes us out of the dark when we are in this deep ocean of parenting. فجزاك الله عنا وعن المسلمين خير الجزاء. طيب, we had some questions that were presented by some of the attendees or the participants when they filled in the form. One of the questions is asking for some kind of recommendation, like how can a person limit their usage of social media themselves to make sure that their children don't have a bad influence?
All right, so we spoke about it, how parents have to be the role model. So they themselves, it's good that they're trying to begin with themselves by trying to lower their own use. I mean, social media, again, it uses a lot of the similar kind of tactics that video games use, that they're built to be addictive. So one thing that we should be mindful of is that if we're going to use social media ourselves, if we're posting things and we're using it, we need to have also limits. So one way to help ourselves limit, monitor how much time you're using. Use your screen time. If you have an Apple phone, it's already there on the side. If you can see your screen time usage and then even different devices, put a limit. That will help you yourself to have a limit. And that's a benefit that, again, psychologists, they say that you have to yourself use them. So maybe let's say maximum 1 hour for the day. So if we get that, it will tell you and it stops. Another thing that you can do is that the idea of scrolling, it's called zombie scrolling. This is where most of the people get addicted. So when you scroll down on social media, it has a kind of like symbol telling you it's loading. That is like the slot machine tactic. The slot machine, when you pull it down, the casino, it's rolling. So when you go down, scrolling, you're scrolling mindlessly in order to find a next dopamine hit. So don't scroll. See what you see. When you get to the bottom, that's enough. Turn off that. Whatever is below that is old. You don't need it. No need for more of that, especially if you're trying to keep up, let's say, with a certain social media app or a certain channel you're following. That's it. For YouTube, another technique they mentioned is turn off autoplay. Turn off autoplay. So when one video finishes, it's finished. Autoplay means the next one starts. There's the connection. Why did they have that autoplay on as default setting? So I mean you keep watching videos without realizing. So inshallah, these are some 3 ways the parents can help themselves. If it gets really out of hand, then obviously they have to use the same tactics that they're going to use for their kids. So they have, for example, they all have an account or they all have a certain media app. It gets cut off at a certain time of the day. So they're forced not to use it. Usually cell phone use is the problem. We're just addicted to holding our phones. One way to make cell phones less appealing, change your colors of your phone, change your resolution to grayscale. Grayscale means your phone is black and white. Scientific studies have shown when your phone is grayscale, it does not benefit you or excite you as much. Hence why almost all notification buttons are red, because red hits the eyes quick. You want to go check quickly. So grayscale, you don't feel like you want to pick it up. It's boring. It's not even exciting. So these are some techniques that can help, inshallah. And the parent from there, and once they get their stuff under control, they can help their kids, inshallah. And they gotta work together. And there's no shame, mom and dad and child having a kind of agreement, like I said in number step 4. We all do it together. Allahu A'lam.
Jazakallah khairan. One of the questions is, what kind of incentives can I give my toddler so that she won't watch?
See, that's the thing. Like, that's a good question, because for toddlers, if we looked at what we mentioned already in our notes, that they already have a limited time to use it, 1 hour or less. So screen time should not be the default. Their screen time should be something special that they get, even not every day, even. You don't need it necessarily, but if you're going to give them every day, it comes at a certain time of day, and that's it. Routine is very important. What happens, parents, they use screen time as reward. This is when it gets tricky because when you give them as a reward, it grows the tolerance and the acceptability. Then they want it more and more and more. The 1 hour becomes two and two, three. So how should you use the devices and screens? It is a considered something now and then. So if you have a routine which is not so fixed or not so, let's say, predictable, then their dependency is going to move from that. Toys are very important, especially toys that can help the kids use their motor skills. So some parents found and find that if their kid watches shows, they can grow their vocabulary, etc., etc. But the scientific studies found that the reason why these kids have better motor skills because they're engaging with the screen by touching it and talk. They already have other activities. So play, so get them puzzles, get them Lego, get them those other kind of interactive toys, way more exciting for them and more creative. For most parents, they found kids' development as they get older is not going in the way that we usually want if their motor skills are underdeveloped. And screen time does not activate those skills. So use screen time like here and there, so there's no dependency on it. And since it's only 1 hour or less, and it's very hard to monitor, you have a certain set of, let's say, a particular viewing, like a kind of program you want them to watch or something you have in mind, you show it here and there. So the kid barely ever recognizes that as a consistent habit. So give them the other toys in place, give them that other activities, and that'll be fun. And therefore, they're always going to have that kind of engagement. Then later, when screens become more and more something that they're used to, they're not so dependent on it because they're not always watching it. So I think it's very important to come up with strategies. Big one is puzzles, using Lego, coming up with these toys. These are the creative stuff. And imagine the play. It's very helpful for kids. Let them run around and just do the stuff that they usually do as kids. Is really helpful. So I think these are important, but we don't want it to be like every day they have a certain time they watch a particular TV show. Then that's where the dependency comes. Also, rewards don't have to be electronic. Rewards can be other things, right? So sometimes we have to move away from the two major problems, rewarding our children with sweets and rewarding them with technology. These are not helpful rewards. Reward them other things with a fun, go outside to the park or something else, right? So these are some of the helpful things. And inshallah, without that routine, then the child will not feel like they need it. They won't remember it. It won't be something like it's big, especially when you haven't introduced it to them as much anyways, right? But now that you have, let's say if they're already using it though, put the screen time when the kids the limit ends, and then we move on to the next activity. So they won't even feel like the need to go to that activity. I have another one planned, right? So that's why parents need activities, something ready to go, right? Wallahu a'lam.
طيب جزاك الله خيرا.
Yeah.
One of the questions is how to address the child when they ask for screens and they're stubborn upon asking it. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the thing we were talking about, that kind of like um aggressiveness, that standoffish behavior the kids they want it because they're used to it or they're getting it at school. We have to stand our ground because we know better. So instead of trying to cave in, if we set the rule or we stick to the rule, and that's proof that the rule is there. In the beginning, it's difficult because the child is going to make a lot of fuss, but later they're going to learn as the extinction burst disappears. They cannot will their way to it. They're just going to have to say, okay, the mom and dad are not going to let me do it, so I'm going to have to come with something else. But especially when they're younger, if you have alternatives, you can always, we talked about in the parenting book, the power of distraction. They want this. How about this? Novelty is key, right? So when the kids are like begging for something, say, oh, I'll give you this instead. I'll show you something fun. And when something is fun and something is exciting, that's what really peaks the dopamine. Dopamine is driven often by novelty. So let's say, okay, no screens, but look, I'm gonna take you to a park. I'm gonna take you over to our cousin's house. We're gonna do this fun activity. That is just as fun. I'm telling. We have to start remembering that kids they only know what they know, but we can actually try to convince them, but we don't fall into their wants because later on we're gonna actually be the ones who are gonna be upset because we knew better. So in the beginning, we're gonna anticipate this. So we say no, we hold our ground, but use the principle of substitution. Come up with something new and also just as fun, right? So it doesn't have to be necessarily no, and we're just going to sit there in silence. Okay, we're going to do something else. We're going to have an alternative. But the real problem will be like if you said yes because they're really bothering you and you're tired and you're stressed, and you have so many things in your life going on, Tomorrow, when they're having these kind of their problems that we talked about, their development is delayed, or they're having academic issues, they're having problems memorizing the Quran. We didn't talk about that a lot here, but that's a big one as well. The screen time and hifz, memorization. What's the correlation? We need to be in the best interest. And again, smiling when you say no, being nice, you don't have to yell and shout. You say no, be patient. It works, and inshallah through that, if they will see later as they get older that look they really care about us. My mom and dad really cared about me because they did what was good for us, and that's what it means to be a parent, right? In the beginning is just is a tough part. Just don't buy in. And like this book is really good. Again, I recommend this book because in there, this doctor, she talks about her own experience with her own children and how some of those contracts that she made for her kids, like no phones in the room. We charge our phones outside the room, all this kind of stuff. She talks about her kids when they got way older, they still practice the same principles they had when they were young, showing that it worked. And on that, she talks about the end of the book is really interesting. So if you hold the ground now, you reap the rewards later. So we really encourage parents, just hold on and make dua and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help you.
طيب جزاك الله خيرا.
Yeah.
One of the parents are asking about Minecraft, and this is a question I have been asked by more than one parent, and it seems as Minecraft is one of the main games that all the children play. So if you can share any details about Minecraft, if you know, if it's permissible, if it's not permissible, if it has things that are harmful, so on and so forth.
Yeah, Minecraft is kind of like Roblox. I don't know if I think both of them are quite popular amongst that age. It's the same concept. It's a kind of game where it's a sandbox style, game where the all the characters are like literally like these cubes or boxes, and they have all this unlimited kind of terrain to roam and to build. The thing is what's going on there. So if you go on the Common Sense media, I recommend parents to go there. Now that I showed you guys website, go here, check the reviews yourself. You can see it says 8 plus, but then there's more than I'm looking right now on my phone, looking at the reviews. More than 333 different parents have commented on it, what they think good or bad. And you can see the iffy content. Some of them think it's good. Some say that it allows violence. Some say that, again, the same problem. There is no immediate like haram there, but there are kids are doing things which are inappropriate there. So why do kids like these games? Because of the freedom. It gives them the ability to do whatever they wish. Later on, like I said, they just transfer over to what's that thing called call Grand Theft Auto. That's the real bad one. So some the parents are not happy with this. So I think we need to be careful. This game also highly immersive, right? This game is very immersive, very addictive. So I would recommend you don't allow your kids to play these games for those reasons of addiction. We're very addicted. I know some kids, yes, also very much addicted. So what's the alternative? Get games that have beginning and end. Minecraft doesn't have an end, right? Just you keep building, keep going. There's no end. So we need games that are less addictive, have beginning end, like racing games. A game where you race a car, beginning end, done. It's finished. You lost the race, you won the race, mashallah, game over. But this one, you're building, you're in like all little world. And I recommend if you want more of the details, go on this website, put it in, you'll get all the feedback, all the parents what they're saying. Some parents are saying here, violence and scariness allows kids to kill animals, fighting hostile creatures. Even though it's blocky graphics, there is nothing that could be considered gory or graphic, but still there's that hostility and violence. So again, we don't want our kids to learn this. And I think it's one of the things that if you're not sure what your kids are doing with it, because some kids use it to build things, to be creative, like building like blocks and stuff, you can see it, you can watch with them, and that's also very important. No child should be playing or watching anything without you first seeing what it is and what they're doing. That can also help you figure out if you like what's going on there or not. That's my advice. But check this website first, and I think a lot of these games we should avoid them for less immersive, less addictive games because games are very tough later on to get off. And that's my advice. But again, check this website inshallah for the greater detail. بإذن ta'ala.
Okay, جزاك الله خيرا. One of the parents are asking, how could I help my children attain taqwa, memorize the Quran, and act according to the teachings of the Quran, and always turn to Allah when they do wrong, etc., etc.
Yeah, that's a topic worthy of another seminar, webinar. But the summary is that a lot of the things that parents want from their kids, the taqwa, the deen, the practice, it comes over time, but Studies have shown that, like recently, again, Kufar have looked carefully. How do you get your child to be religious? And the good news for parents to know is what Islam taught us. That if you, as a parent, are reading the Quran, are you, your parent, are practicing Sunnah, you're praying the Salah on time, you're doing all the right things, stay from the haram, inshallah, Allah will make your children likewise like that. Even if in the beginning it's really tough, they're not doing that, they will get there eventually. And this is the good news, because we know, again, the parenting book I mentioned, how the Salaf al-Salih used to do a lot of good deeds to get their children upright. But with that, we should know that you have to be the role model. You're the key. Lots of conversation, lots of patience, lots of communication, and modeling. Some of the greatest imams, even, this is how they became ai that their parents used to take them and show them the right way and do the right thing. And I give the example again, Imam Ahmed, rahimahullah, both his sons were ulama. How did Imam Ahmed raise his sons to be ulama? Because he himself is an alim and he used to embed the ilm in their life. Example number one, it's mentioned in the biography of Imam Ahmed. Anytime Imam Ahmed would find a righteous imam or a scholar of hadith who came into the city, he would take his sons and show them and say, "This is a righteous man. This is the kind of man that I would like you to benefit from, to be like." He would show them, model them who are the righteous. Another thing they mentioned, that he would play games with them based on the deen. So they mentioned the biography. He would tell one of his sons, I think it was Abdullah, again, because Abdullah, he's the muhaddith and Salih was the qadi. He used to say to him, "Give me the hadith and I'll give you the isnad, or you give me the isnad and I'll give you the hadith." Allahu Akbar. Imagine that's how he was playing a game with him. You mentioned the isnad, I'll tell you the matan. Or you give me the matan, I'll give you the isnad. And he saw his son will play with him by mentioning something. And later, is it surprising that his son becomes another scholar? Kitab al-Sunnah, Imam Ahmed, Abdullah ibn Ahmed ibn Hanbal. Again, modeling the deen, showing them, and they saw him praying. They saw him. I think these are the biggest examples to get your kids to be righteous. And if you're making dua for your kids all the time and doing the right things, inshallah, you will find that your children, inshallah, by Allah's permission, they will be like this. Even if it's not now, even if it's not now, it will, inshallah, get there as you go. Because a lot of parents, they give up easily, or they get disheartened when they see their kids when they're younger, they fall into fitan, or they're not what they want them to be. They're just upset and said, look, they're failing. But remember, they're still young. We all had turnaround days and dates. We all made a U-turn. And a nice new study that came out recently, he had a Afro American man. He's a kafir, right? But he's a scientist, he's a professor. He wrote a book, and this is a very interesting book. It's brand new. So I think it's 20. It was just published in the year 2021. It's called "The Handing Down the Faith: How Parents Pass Their Religion On to the Next Generation." Passing down the faith, how parents pass their religion on to the next generation. So he's not talking about any particular religion, all religion. What are the biggest factors for religious behavior, religiosity? How do you get them to become religious? And his conclusion was in the Muqaddimah, after all this research, he says the biggest factor related to this finding is that parents' practice of their own religion was the number one factor to get their children to become religious. Allahu Akbar. The number one factor. That's what we believe. And you see today, when you have these kinds, Oxford University Press, this is not a small book, it's Oxford University Press. This is his conclusion. We already know that. But how many times we find parents, they want their kids to go to the health program and they themselves are not memorizing anything. In the beginning, it's okay because the kids, they don't know. But later, when they see that me and you are not reading anything Quran, or because we're busy, and the kids are not foolish, they will say, okay, look, mom and dad doesn't care. They don't read the Quran themselves. Or how about, for example, subliminal messages that we give our kids? For example, sometimes we tell our kids, Islam is important, but we don't really ask them about Islam. We ask them about their academic performance. So the kid learns young. My mom and dad only ask me my grades. That's all that matters. But they don't ask me about what am I doing? Did I pray my salah today? Am I doing any haram? What's going on with your kid, family, your friends? So if we're doing the right thing, inshallah ta'ala, Allah will save our kids and never give up on them. The dua of the parents is mustajab, it's answered. Always make dua for them. And remember, the pious predecessors, maybe that's a webinar for later, inshallah. Examples of the pious predecessors, the Salaf al-Salih, the Imams, and their children. Because a lot of us, we don't know. Some of the Salaf al-Salih, they had children who were not righteous, or they were not easy. Let's just use that word, difficult. How do they deal with them? How do they get them to get on the right path? So maybe that's a future program as well. We could highlight great examples to source from. But again, the study I mentioned, the book, and the adillah we already know. It's great hope, inshallah, that if you're doing the right things, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala وَلَا يُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ, Allah will not make to waste the good doings or the actions of the good doers and the muhsinun, those who are have ihsan. Wallahu a'lam.
Okay, we'll take the final question for today, inshallah. If you notice yourself or your child has an addiction with something, is it better to get rid of it altogether or to limit it?
So that's the thing. When there is an addiction, there is already a problem, and the problem needs to be dealt with in the most effective way. Cutting off something haram cold turkey is ideal, but it's not always the easiest way to do it. It's the best way, but not the easiest. Hence, parents have to think deeply, how can we get them to go from where they are to where they need to go? So, for example, you may cut it off altogether, say no more devices, and you find then that the child will just use it when you're not there, right? So, parents, studies have found that children lie to their parents about how much time they use the device when they know that they've overstepped the bounds. So, kids are like this, they will lie. So, parents have to realize, okay, my child's addicted to the video games, they're addicted to the devices, they're addicted to the screen time. I need to have a conversation first with them. I need to read the resources of the experts. I need to talk to people of knowledge, figure out a game plan, and then I have to do it. Using tadarruj can work. That scholars say that's permissible for someone who's doing something haram to gradually get out of it if that's the only way out. But the ideal way is to stop the haram immediately. We don't have time right now to get into it, but the ulama have differed on this in general. If something's haram or something's wrong, you have to stop it. But you have to stop it cold turkey right now, or can you go to stages? And I think, for example, when we know devices in origin are permissible, going through stages to stop it can be ideal. Can be ideal. For example, they're playing hours and hours. Now we learned it's not allowed for them to do that. It's not healthy. We have to sit down with them and say, look, right, this is not good for your health. It's not Islamic, right? I've noticed this, what's happening. You gotta talk to them from compassion. I know what's happening. I've seen now that you're playing a lot. Now on, we're gonna limit it. Let's say we're gonna follow the guidelines. The child in the beginning is obviously gonna feel very upset. It's like, well, I used to always play this many hours. No, it's for our own benefit. And you have to use the evidence in front of you. Look at your grades, look at your akhlaq, look at your salah. You know, yeah, the children, they know too. They know when they're going downhill. And then you could work with them. But if you say no, yeah, altogether, think about, okay, what can I do when the urge comes to play? Can I give them alternatives? Maybe we'll sign them up for something. So some parents like to do is like, in order to stop the habit, break the habit, they sign up for sports. So no more games. They're going to sports after school or a couple of days a week. They go play karate, or what's it called, or something like that, taekwondo, or to do basketball, soccer, football. They do something like this. That's it. That will help a lot. New activity, more. But if you know your child is the one who, subhanAllah, is not like even interested in this, or it's hard, you could just try to work with limiting it and modeling good habits. Like I said, sometimes we need to think about alternatives. But if you know, for example, that you could just get them around it. You can just stop them altogether. Try that first. But I feel like for every child and every parent, it's a bit different. But it's not wrong to limit, because the Sharia permits us to go through stages to prohibit, to stop something. Again, video games or computer use, it's not haram, but excessive use is not good. So I would say try to see what's most beneficial for you. But there's nothing wrong going stages. But if you can stop altogether, that's very good. And like I said, changing the habit. How could they game if they're tired? How could they? Okay, how about this? You take the devices in their bedroom, put the device in the living room. They can only game when you're there, so you can watch them and you can remind them. You can stop the game together. These are the things that once you change the habits, like over there at the end of our slide, once you come up with these, you'll see the behaviors will change too. So inshallah, that could be a good thing, but it's not wrong to go through stages. It can work. It can work, especially because that's more realistic than stopping cold turkey. And we have to always remember, make dua, but have that conversation before you do it. Like I said, understanding is important. A lot of the reaction will be dependent on how you introduce this to them. So generally, if it's phases, we're going through phases to do it, or I talk to you first, then we did the implementation. That can be really helpful. But if you just come one day after today's webinar, you go to your room, you take out everything, you throw it out. That's I don't think that's gonna be the most conducive to for the child. And also they don't understand. They'll be like, well, my mom, dad, what happened? What's going on? You used to allow me. So may Allah give us tawfiq and allow our parents, our children to progress in a way that is pleasing to him subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Ameen, Jazakallah khairan. Just a final point. One of the parents shared a couple websites to help with safety online or advice also on screens and app safety. One of them is internetmatters.org and the other one is childnet.com. Perhaps it has
Yes.
fitted what.
Jazakallah khair for sharing, for the parent to share that. These are also very beneficial. So inshallah they will share with others as within ta'ala. So after this, inshallah, also I will edit everything here and I'll share the slide deck as well with the parents, whoever's interested in it.
Jamil, barakallahu feekum.
Okay,
I would like to thank everyone who attended. Jazakumullahu khairan. And we hope that you will attend the next webinar we'll have, inshallah, next month, bi'idhnillah azza wa jal. And the recording for the webinar is, we hope to have it available soon on the YouTube channel for Afiyah Learning. So you can also refer back to it and listen to it again. We also apologize for the slight delay we've had on today's webinar. And inshallah khairan. Whatever else we can share and post will be on our socials and on our Instagram or whatever, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت استغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.